The following program, The Russ Belville Show, is intended for responsible adults only. We advocate to the repeal of marijuana prohibition for adults. We discuss the science, culture, and controversy about America's marijuana laws. We do not advocate any illegal activity and encourage all listeners to learn their state and federal marijuana laws. Opinions and claims made by guests and advertisers on The Russ Belville Show are their own, and The Russ Belville Show cannot be held legally responsible for their validity or reliability. Viewer discretion is advised.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey! Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
From the promise of legalization.
And I think that we think it can criminalize our marijuana laws.
To the agony of prohibition.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Yeah, I hear you had a question for me.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Hooray, hooray, welcome to the day. It is Tuesday, January 8th, 2013, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. I'm Radical Russ Belville. Welcome to the show. We are live here from Rolla J Studios in beautiful Potland, Oregon, just 7 miles south of legal marijuana in Washington State, in Vancouver. That's really cool. Have to make a trip up there one of these days. All sorts of stuff to get to on today's program. First of all, you may have seen the petition going around from Marijuana Policy Project. If not, we'll get to that in the Radical Rant today. We are talking about Project SAM, or as I like to call it, Sam I Am, and I'll explain in the rant. Patrick J. Kennedy, a former representative from Rhode Island, has jumped on board this, as well as former Reagan speechwriter David Frum, and really it's all just Kevin Sabet's wet dream come true. So we'll talk about Project Sam here toward the end of the show. Also, we're going to go behind the headlines today. You may have caught a little football game on television yesterday where the Alabama Crimson Tide won 2 national champs in a row by destroying Notre Dame. Oh my God, it's like another team didn't even show up. We're going to talk a little football in the behind the headlines and the NCAA and its drug testing practices. Also, a little bit on the tearful confession of Tyrone Matthew, the honey badger, about his marijuana use on ESPN. We've got some other headlines, including arrest statistics from New York City to get to, the tale of drug use in Ohio prisons. We've got an Electric Tuesday tune today, and I'll have to turn to Brian the Red for this one because I don't know this band or this group. Who we got coming up on Electric Tuesday today?
Well, it's actually a track that got downloaded with a whole bunch of other tracks I got several years ago, and I thought that it was by a band called Alpha and Omega, because that was the group of files it was associated with. Apparently, just the album was called Alpha and Omega, and all these years I thought it was the other way around. The album is called Alpha and Omega, and the artist is called Project Pitchfork, and it's some random dub, interesting techno kind of stuff.
All right, we'll take a look at that for Electric Tuesday. Also coming up later on tonight, we're going to have another edition of A Different View. It's going to be at 8 o'clock Pacific Time. It's Women Ending Prohibition with Jen Alexander and Iva Cunningham. So check that out. Their special guest tonight, Erin Purchase, the mother of Brave Michaela, who's going to be on the Ricky Lake Show in 2 days on Thursday. So make sure you check that out. We got the 420 Radio News coming up next.
We'll be right back after these messages from our 420 friendly sponsors. Support these advertisers because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
The law offices of Omar Figueroa would like to remind you to stand up for your rights. Please do not give up your precious liberties. There's nothing wrong with standing up for our constitutional rights, and in fact, it's the only way to honor the Constitution that recognizes our natural rights. Treat law enforcement with respect and respect the Constitution by standing up for your rights. If you are detained or arrested, stand up for your rights by repeating, I respectfully invoke all my legal and constitutional rights. I do not consent to any search and seizure. I want to remain silent, and I want to speak to my attorney, Omar Figueroa. Omar Figueroa has more than a decade of experience in federal and California courts and graduated from Yale University, Stanford Law School, and Trial Lawyers College. Please contact the law offices of Omar Figueroa at 415-489-0420 or 707-829-0215 or on the web at www.omarfigueroa.com.
Wiz Khalifa's wallet and cell phone are missing. Again. And Taco Bell's already been searched. We got to look somewhere else. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after a word from these 420 friendly sponsors. Wait a minute. This is internet radio. There are no dials here.
Now it's time for your 420 radio news for Tuesday, January 8th, 2013. I'm Russ Belville. Ex-Representative Patrick J. Kennedy has lobbying against legal marijuana. This from ABC News. Former Rhode Island Representative Patrick Kennedy says he's established a group to lobby against legalized marijuana. The ex-congressman says efforts around the United States to legalize marijuana are well-intentioned but misguided. Kennedy's group, Project SAM, for Smart Approaches to Marijuana, will instead lobby for increased treatment for marijuana and drug abuse. He says making marijuana legal would introduce a new substance comparable to alcohol and tobacco that would cause more public health problems than it would solve. Kennedy also says he is skeptical about medical marijuana. He says it misdirects compassion for those who suffer from cancer and other diseases to support for an extreme drug policy. U.S. drug czar slams medical marijuana during a San Francisco event. This from the San Francisco Examiner. The nation's top drug cop advocated a different approach to narcotics enforcement and stressed that there is no war on drugs, but had stern words Monday for the San Francisco-bred medical marijuana movement. Drug users need treatment and education rather than jail terms, according to Gil Kurlikowski, the former Seattle police chief who now heads President Barack Obama's Office of National Drug Control Policy. Speaking at a gathering of law enforcement officers at the University of San Francisco, Kurlikowski also said that calling cannabis medicine, quote, sends a terrible message, end quote, to the nation's teens. High school students are more likely to smoke marijuana than tobacco due to growing perception that marijuana is less harmful, he said. Kurlikowski was in town to highlight the Obama administration's 21st century approach to drug use. Kurlikowski had stern words for legalization, which is often painted as a solution to the public health and budget woes caused by drug use. Quote, the Obama administration strongly believes it is a false choice, he said, and not ground in science. Medical marijuana has never been through the FDA process, he added. We have the world's most renowned process to decide what is medicine and what should go into people's bodies. And marijuana has never been through that process. The nation's largest marijuana dispensary can remain open, judge says. This from RadicalRuss.com. Chief Federal Magistrate Maria Elena James ruled in favor of Harborside Health Center and denied motions by Harborside's landlords asking the court to order an immediate halt of cannabis sales at their properties. On Monday, Harborside Executive Director Steve D'Angelo said, quote, we have always believed that a Bay Area jury will recognize the value that Harborside brings to the community and refuse to allow the federal government to seize the properties where we are located. The court found that entering injunctions against Harborside would not be an appropriate means of preventing illegal use of the property, and that, quote, there is nothing indicating that Harborside's continued operation compromises the existence, value, or title of either the Oakland or San Jose property, end quote. The court found that entering injunctions against Harborside would not be an appropriate means of preventing the illegal use of the property. The court ruling stated any argument about the urgency of stopping Harborside's activities rings hollow. Harborside's lead attorney, Henry Wykowski, commented, "Despite the government's effort to shortcut the case, Harborside will now be able to fully defend itself at trial. This is all we had asked, and the court has now agreed. The stage is now set for a jury trial on the underlying issues of the litigation, which will probably take place in about 1 year." New York City's arrests rose to record levels during the Bloomberg era, NYPD data shows. This according to HuffingtonPost.com. Despite Mayor Michael Bloomberg heralding a record low number of inmates in city jails, the amount of people arrested during his administration is the highest in city history. In fact, the number of NYPD arrests in the Big Apple has jumped nearly 23% since Bloomberg took office. There were 338,000 arrests in 2002 compared to 413,000 last year, police statistics show. And finally, from WOWK-TV, prison drug tests raise concerns. Ohio prison officials say they are concerned with the relatively high percentage of inmates who tested positive for drugs recently. They found 3.32% of inmates testing positive for drugs, the highest since the state began testing in the early 1990s. Most of the officials say drugs come in over walls and fences, tossed into prison yards from the outside. This is your 420 radio news for January 8th, 2013. I'm Russ Belville. When we come back, we're going to go behind the headlines and take a look at drug testing in the NCAA and the case of Honey Badger Tyrann Mathieu. You're listening to The Russ Belville Show on 420radio.org.
I'm Sub Cool from Team Green Avenger. At TGAgenetics.com, we are working on the leading edge of medical strains. Our strains are rigorously tested for THC, CBD, THCV, and other critical cannabinoids. Know your grow. Check out our genetic diversity at TGAgenetics.com, the home of Jelly Bean, Jack the Ripper, Vortex, and other award-winning cannabis strains.
Cannabinoids and health.
Cannabinoids.
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 Why am I having trouble saying that?
Cannabinoids.
Oh, jeez.
Cannabinoids.
What a gift.
Flame on if you can. You're looking for that dope weed.
Welcome back, everybody. 13 after the hour. Time for us to go behind the headlines. And if you're a big sports fan like I am, the national championship game last night was quite the disappointment. Unless, of course, you're an Alabama fan, because they ended up beating the Irish 42-14. And so I've got football on the mind. And I want to talk about a little bit about the NCAA and the way that it treats its student athletes. Yesterday, I briefly mentioned this story of Tyrann Mathieu, the cornerback known as the Honey Badger, 5'7" guy, right? Just fierce player. He was on ESPN the other day, and there was he had a very tearful interview, just bawling in this interview on ESPN. Of course, he got kicked off the team for failing a drug test for marijuana. He then later got arrested with some other LSU players for possession of marijuana. Basically ended his college career. It put his draft future in jeopardy with the NFL. And so on. So, I mean, you can be cynical about this and say that it's a case of a kid who's looking for a big paycheck in the NFL, who's saying anything he's got to say to try to, raise his stock in the draft. That might be the case. Although I don't think the NFL has too much of a problem with marijuana use these days, considering how many of the really good players, the Percy Harvins, for example, that are out there, that they don't seem to mind that much. But anyway, I don't want to be that cynical about it. Because one of the things that comes down to when we talk about these NCAA athletes is you got to remember how young they are. These are kids, man. These are young men, very young adults, just experiencing the first letdowns and the first accomplishments and the first major emotional swings of their lives and building their character. And so you got a guy like this Tyrann Mathieu who's, made his way to fame and everyone on campus knows him and he's got national prominence. He's got a nickname. He's got a freaking meme out there on the social networks. And the pressure that's put on a kid like that when he tests positive for marijuana. And the thing that I can't help but think about this is that it's not the marijuana that caused this kid any problems. He became the honey badger while he was smoking pot. Okay, so it didn't seem to affect him rising to these levels of national prominence. It's the prohibition of it and the testing for it and the invasion of his privacy that caused his life to come crashing down. And here's a couple of his quotes. Sitting in that jail cell, it clicked. Looking at those people just staring at me, you don't belong in here. Yes, Tyrann, you're absolutely right. You don't belong in there with them. That's exactly right. That's the perfect feeling you should have been feeling there because you didn't belong in there. He said he's scared now because it's reality now. I don't ever want to feel like this again. He was a Heisman Trophy finalist, this kid, and he goes on to say, I'd tell the world I abused myself through marijuana. I abused myself through marijuana. Was I addicted to it? Maybe. Did I form a habit of it? Yes. When people didn't think I had a good game or I didn't have the greatest practice ever, I didn't go into the office and try to figure out what was going on. I just automatically abused myself. There was nothing anybody could do at that point, Mathieu said, crying. I had to accept the responsibility that I was never going to play for LSU again, the only school that believed in me, and I didn't even believe in them. I felt I was a loyalty person. Looking back, I didn't know anything about loyalty. I could talk it, but walking it was a whole different thing. And when you realize you're not loyal, that's what hurts the most. When you realize you lied to people, that's what hurt the most. And I hear that and I read that and I think, loyalty? For all of the effort you put in on the field for Louisiana State University to make millions and millions of dollars on television contracts to fund the coach's Escalade, you're the one who doesn't feel loyal? When they threw you away like a used Kleenex for a dirty drug test on marijuana, and you're the one who's got the loyalty problem? This just infuriates me, and it infuriates me more when I found this most recent story today. This was in the New York Times. Drug testing company tied to NCAA stirs criticism. Turns out that there's this company called Drug Free Sport. It's a privately held company with just 30 employees. Its clients include Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, the NCAA, and about 300 individual college programs. However, since it's a private company, its net worth, its assets aren't exactly disclosed, but we do know the NCAA in $4.6 million on drug testing, collecting 13,500 samples randomly selected from 400,000 student athletes. But guess what? Guess what happens when they do the drug testing, this drug-free sport company? In the 2010-2011 academic year, this according to the New York Times, 10,735 athletes. 10,735 athletes were tested in the NCAA's year-round program. And this year-round program is the Olympic style, right? Where the kids got to go in and someone of the same gender actually watches them urinate, right? Okay. 10,735 young adults had to be subject to that for the privilege of making millions of dollars for the NCAA and its in its school programs. According to data released by the organization, there were 63 positive tests. 0.6%. Yet, when they did surveys of student athletes, and they asked these student athletes, they said, let's see, in 1999, for example, the rate of positive tests has been no higher. They began drug testing in 1999. The rate of positive tests had been no higher than 1% in any year, despite an NCAA survey of student athletes that indicated at least 1 in 5 used marijuana. 20% of the student athletes use marijuana. You're catching 0.6% of them. So, of course, the drug testers are saying we need to make the drug testing more stringent. And the way I look at it is you're taking a superstar like Tyrann Mathieu and making an example of him when you're not willing to enforce that same rule for all of the student athletes out there. It's time to get rid of this drug testing. It is ridiculous. If someone's got use of marijuana is not a performance-enhancing substance, and I have a different argument for the whole performance-enhancing side of things, But let's leave that aside here. They're not enhancing their performance through the use of marijuana, and they're not seriously endangering their health. If these NCAA athletes can enjoy a beer on their off time if they're of legal age, and we can sell Budweiser ads on the national championship, by God, leave the honey badger alone. 0.6%. What's that?
What a waste of money.
Yeah, waste of money, invasion of privacy, and it's just sick.
Oh, have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. Have you ever met that funny reefer man? A reefer man. If he said he swam to China, he would sell you South Carolina. Then you know you're talking to that reefer man.
Hi, I'm cannabis.
Non-alcohol.
Do you know that I can be used to treat a number of physical and psychological conditions like depression, Huntington's disease, and osteosclerosis?
Your mother's an osteoporosis.
I can also be used to help those who are abusing our friend over here.
You know what the problem is with you? You think you're better than everybody else. Hey, look at me, I'm weak.
Okay, I actually do prefer to be called cannabis. I'm illegal.
I'm illegal, because weed makes you stupid.
Funky roller ring.
Oh yeah.
What's happening, groovy cats? This is your funk master of ceremonies, Big Daddy, and I want you to join me every Thursday night at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, right here at the Funky Roller Ring.
Oh yeah.
Your home of soul, funk, and disco, baby.
Funky-licious.
There's always a party at the Funky Roller Ring.
Warning. Hits taken on this show are larger than they appear. Do not try this at home. These people are professionals. Or at least they pay me to say that. Everyone knows music and marijuana go together, so let's wind up our 20 after break with the Russ Belville Show's Daily Toker Tunes, the best in pod-safe 420 music from around the web. Today is Electric Tuesday, featuring the latest in electronic dance music and other cutting-edge genres. You can get downloads and more information about all our Daily Toker Tunes by visiting music.radicalruss.com. Now, sit back and enjoy your Daily Toker Tunes.
All right, you say Omega, I say Omega. You say Sega, I say Sega. Welcome back, everybody. Toker Talk Radio is coming up in just another, 36 minutes away. So we'll get to taking your calls then at 971-533-7111. Right now, it's Electric Tuesday time, Daily Toker Tunes. And our 20 after break, we're going to turn things over here to Brian the Red because I don't know a thing about this band.
Well, actually, I don't know much about them either because apparently I've had this track in a playlist of mine for quite some time. I downloaded it years ago under the assumption it was the band was the album name, not, anyway. Anyway, found out today that the name of the band was something else, but this is Project Pitchfork with Insight.
All right, let's get it on Alpha and Omega is the album. Project Pitchfork is the band. Yep. This is Insight. We'll put this in the Daily Toker Tunes feed. Check it out at 420radio.org. You got to be a VIP member to get at the Daily Toker Tunes posts.
I'm trying to tell. Oh, it's real. Alright, now let me see. And for those of you who are wondering if I'm high right now, I am not. That is not nearly enough to get me high.
Look, when I was a kid, I inhaled frequently. That was the point.
Remember, Mr. President, you once were just one bust away from being Barry the drug criminal.
Thanks for joining us on the new 420radio.org. Check our contact form if you've got any questions.
You want answers? I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended a Shaolin temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical rant.
All right, folks, I've been working on this all day. Got a couple of notices. I just posted into the chat room a link to a petition that Marijuana Policy Project has put up, and it's calling on former Rhode Island Representative Patrick J. Kennedy to recuse himself, to quit the Project Sam thing that he's put together here, based on the fact that his family, the Kennedys, made all their millions on alcohol, both when it was prohibited and when it was legal. And it was a little bit hypocritical, if you say the least here, to be trying to crusade for this SAM project, for us using marijuana, a substance that is far less harmful. So the first thing that I did on this, I heard the name Sam, and I couldn't help but be a little bit snarky about that. So let me see if I can find the graphic here that we'll put up on the screen. I do not like the pills or booze. They make me sick. They make me snooze. I will not stop my smoking pot. Keep your booze, Sam. I like it not. But I am Sam. I'm here to help. When you smoke pot, that's not good health. So if you toke or vape or dab, we'll force you into drug rehab. I will not join you, Sam. I do not need a rehab, Sam. I will not stop my smoking pot, so keep your pills. I like them not. That graphic is available up on my Twitter feeds and the Facebook page and the blogs and everywhere. So I'd appreciate if you'd pass that around and link it to the petition that I've put the link up in the chat room, the petition there to call on Patrick Kennedy to drop out of SAM. So what's the big deal with this SAM? Let me tell you a little bit about this. We got this former representative, this Oxy addict, by the way, self-admitted OxyContin addict who wrecked his car high on Oxy. And, of course, the silver spoon descendant of a bootlegger, the Kennedy clan. He's joined up with David Frum. Now, David Frum has recently said, just say no is a good policy because it's easy to follow. And my one non-pot smoking friend, Dr. Kevin Sabet, the one who says, I don't want a war on drugs. I just want to keep threatening pot smokers with jail. They've formed this group called SAM. And SAM stands for Smart Approach to Marijuana. And I assume they disregarded sensible because we already got it. But anyway, I've decided to call them something different. In my love for Dr. Seuss, I've decided to call them Sam I Am, which stands for Stealth Approach to Marijuana Incarcerated Americans. They're launching tomorrow. They're going to have big press releases and everything. So spread the graphic far and wide. Let's expose what their smart approach really is. There's a petition up at MPP. Go ahead and get that signed. But basically what this is Kevin Sabet's game plan writ large. Kevin Sabet wants to paint the war on drugs on one side and legalizers on the other side and proclaim that they're both irrational extremes, and only Sam I Am will have the rational middle ground approach. It's kind of a bit of genius that he's stealing from Rick Steves and Washington State. Rick Steves always talks about how Europe is not hard on drugs or soft on drugs, but smart on drugs. So Sabet's stealing the thunder of that by appropriating smart and the concept of rejecting hard and soft extremes. The approach part, well, that's right out of Alison Holcomb's playbook. Paint it not as the solution, but the beginning, the approach. The problem, of course, is that Sam I Am is just lipstick on the pig of prohibition. Sam I Am would keep marijuana illegal and use the force of law to mandate re-education and monitoring of peaceful pot smokers. Think drug courts for every pot smoker, even if that pot smoker wasn't breaking any other law or bothering anyone else. It would be like mandating inpatient alcoholic treatment for anyone you catch with a Budweiser. Sabet claims the debate is polarized and it's a false dichotomy between legalization and drug war. Well, yes, it is a polarized dichotomy because there's really only two stances you can take. One, government ought to stop people from smoking pot. Or two, government ought to leave pot smokers alone. There's no middle ground there. You're either punishing me for pot, absent harming anyone else, or you're not. So let's dig into this. Here are some of the public policy positions from the Sam I Am website, and you can find the links at my blog at radicalruss.com. You decide which side of the drug war that these public policy points fall into. Sam believes possession or use of a small amount of marijuana should be a civil offense subject to a mandatory health screening and marijuana education program. Referrals to treatment and or social support services should be made if needed. The individual could even be monitored for 6 to 12 months in a probation program designed to prevent further drug use. That would be PTES. That no marijuana use in any form is permitted in public view. The production, distribution, dealing, and sale of marijuana should remain misdemeanors or felonies based on amounts possessed. Driving with any amount of marijuana in one's system should be at least a misdemeanor. Repeat offenses need harsher punishments. Driving under the influence of any amount of marijuana should result in mandatory health assessment, marijuana education programs, and referral to treatment or social services. There should be policies outlawing marijuana storefronts or limiting the sale of drug paraphernalia. For those who have not progressed to full marijuana addiction, a process called SBIRT, screening, brief interventions, and referral to treatment may be appropriate. SBIRT services include an initial drug screen by general primary care physicians or counselors to identify at-risk people. Brief interventions may range from 1 meeting for educational consultation to 12 sessions of substance use intervention. If necessary, there are referrals to treatment for specialized services, case management, and follow-up support in the community. A major method to treat marijuana addiction is through cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy comprises a combination of approaches meant to increase self-control. Motivational approaches, such as motivational interviewing, are best used to produce rapid, internally motivated change. These brief interventions focus on a non-confrontational therapeutic alliance to facilitate a patient's willingness to change. All right, so Sam I Am basically believes that it's okay if you smoke pot, but only if no one ever knows that you do. Once we know, once you're found to be in possession of some pot, or once we have some evidence that you've ever smoked some pot after we've pulled you over in your car and we've taken your urine or your blood or your saliva, and even if that pot use was days or weeks ago, long before you got in the car, then you've got to report to the mandatory government re-education camp and subject yourself to monitoring of your bodily fluids. Public knowledge of your marijuana use is proof that you are mentally ill, and we must non-confrontationally facilitate your willingness to change. To Budweiser, I suppose. And if you decide that you don't need rehab, Well, it's a prison cell for you, isn't it? And forget about growing or buying any, because those guys still go to prison, right? So really, what change does Sam I Am offer? Pot smokers will go to drug courts, get sentenced to rehab, be forced on a P test on probation, and criminals will still make an enormous profit supplying a black market. What's the difference than what we're doing now? Well, here are a few of the distracting positives that Sam I Am is offering. That there is an end to the practice of stop and frisk. That there is expungement of any personal record regarding possession of small amounts of marijuana. An end to mandatory minimum sentences so judge can exercise discretion under the law. Restoration of all civil rights once sentences have been served. Those are wonderful ideas. And I hope people aren't fooled by this maneuver. Because what Sam I Am is doing here is ceding a few unwinnable battles in order to win the war. None of these suggestions end marijuana being contraband and possession of it being punishable by law. But they do address some of the most egregious harms of the drug war. Now, this is a brilliant strategy on Sam I Am's part because it mirrors what we did with medical marijuana. You know, you have some people that hate pot no matter what. And you got some people who love pot no matter what. And then there's this big middle who are the ones that have to be convinced, the people you got to win over to win elections. Now, for a long time, the fight was pot or not. And the big middle sided with the hate pot side. And then we introduced medical marijuana into the debate, and we peeled away enough of the big middle from the hate pot side by giving them a pot consumer they couldn't hate. So Sam I Am, in these concessions, and there's a few others they're giving, have realized that the debate is not pot or not anymore. It's drug war or not. And the big middle is increasingly siding with the hate drug war side. So to peel away some of the big middle, Sam I Am introduces kinder, gentler drug war to the debate. And so liberals that are astonished at the racism of stop and frisk or the injustice of mandatory minimums can consider joining the love drug war side. So don't be fooled by this. Nowhere is this strategy more apparent than Sam I Am's treatment of medical marijuana, the battle that we have demolished them on. And when we come back from break, we're going to continue the rant. We're going to take a look at their treatment of medical marijuana, what Sam I Am is projecting as far as the federal government's research and the tobacco companies. And we're going to end it up with a look at David Frum, a former Reagan speechwriter. You couldn't get more left and right than Patrick Kennedy and David Frum to show you how idiocy rules both sides of the aisle in the drug war debate.
420 friendly sponsors.
We got to go.
Support these advertisements because their ad money goes straight to the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
A huge percentage of the murder cases I'm involved in have some kind of illegal drug distribution component. Drug policy kills more people than the drugs themselves. In 1900, when you could buy heroin in a Sears mail-order catalog, the government statistics were that approximately 1.3% of the U.S. population had a drug addiction problem. In 2010, after a 40-year war on drugs, the government estimates that about 1.3% of the population has a drug addiction problem. The statistics are identical. 100 million Americans have admitted they've used illegal drugs. It isn't like a fringe element that's doing it. If you regulated them as a health issue instead of as a criminal moral issue, you could much more effectively regulate them. When you talk to a group of people, liberal or conservative, old or young, and they listen to the facts, they come out of there saying, wow, This really is a crazy thing to be doing.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson, and I need your help. Our marijuana laws are terribly unfair, and they make criminals out of law-abiding citizens. Nearly 2,000 Americans are arrested every day on marijuana charges, and we are unfairly destroying the lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of people simply because they smoke marijuana. These are not criminals. They are average citizens like you, good neighbors who work hard, raise families, pay taxes, and contribute to their communities. And it's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. We need your help to end marijuana prohibition once and for all. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Welcome back, everybody. 15 minutes till top of the hour, and we get to Toker Talk Radio, where we'll take your calls at 971-533-7111. We're continuing on with the expose on Project Sam I Am, the stealth approach to marijuana-incarcerated Americans that's being promoted by David Frum, former Representative Patrick Kennedy, and, of course, my one non-pot smoking friend, Dr. Kevin Sabet. And I was mentioning how their strategy in trying to peel away people into supporting continued prohibition is most egregious when it comes to their treatment of medical marijuana. And let me just read to you their positions on medical marijuana, a lot of the stuff you've heard before, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. Project SAM calls for the following regarding cannabis-based medicines: the rapid expansion of research into the components of the marijuana plant for delivery via non-smoked forms, the establishment of an emergency or research FDA IND program that allows seriously ill patients to obtain non-smoked components of marijuana before final FDA approval, the end of cannabis clubs and so-called dispensaries that are fronts for marijuana stores and do not follow appropriate standards of medical care. Some constituents of marijuana, including THC, are available today in pill form. Dronabinol or Marinol is man-made THC. Some synthetic mimics of those constituents are also available, Nabilone or Sesamet. In some countries, marijuana-based medicines, meaning medications that aren't smoked, have been approved to treat neuropathic pain related to cancer and spasticity related to multiple sclerosis. These products include Nabeximols Sativex, which contains THC and other cannabinoids called cannabidiol. Well, they've given up on trying to say that marijuana is not medical. That's at least a victory. Now, the problem for them is that it's a crude plant form that hasn't been approved by the FDA. You know, that esteemed organization that approved Vioxx as safe for human use. That same FDA that isn't stopping vitamin supplements, alleged penis-enlarging pills, herbal supplements, or any number of questionably safe products peddled with a label that reads, "This statement has not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease." Could we get that label for pot at least? Sam I Am continues by claiming current medical marijuana programs are a joke, but no laughing matter, which once again raises the shibboleth of very few medical marijuana patients had cancer, HIV, AIDS, glaucoma, or multiple sclerosis. And they have no shame twisting the medical marijuana registry statistics to say things like, the vast majority, 94%, reported severe pain, without ever noting that patients can register with multiple conditions. And severe pain is one of the first symptoms of just about every condition on the medical marijuana registry. Sam I Am also shamelessly tries to convince you that the federal government is doing serious research into cannabinoid medicine. $14 million from 2007 to 2011. Woo! Of course, it takes about $100 million to bring a single drug through the FDA approval process. And almost all of that $14 million was spent on research to show how bad marijuana is, so I'm not sure how that helps patients any. Sam I Am also goes full circle and resurrects the hippie myth about big tobacco taking over the marijuana industry. The URL of their page literally reads marijuana-is-like-tobacco. Marijuana is like tobacco. The scare is that the big tobacco companies, which lied about the addictiveness and danger of tobacco while knowingly marketing to kids, will do the same with marijuana. Now, that's a strange argument to make when, thanks to every non-arrest approach we've ever taken, fewer kids are smoking tobacco than ever recorded. We have the lowest rates of teen smoking ever. We didn't arrest a single adult. We didn't force a single adult to have to get nicotine patches. We didn't force a single adult into nicotine rehab or mandatory education camps to understand the dangers of tobacco smoking. We made the education available to people. We've forced big tobacco to stop advertising. I mean, when's the last time you heard from Joe Camel? These are the solutions. We've already learned these lessons. It's stranger still when you consider that lying about the addictiveness and danger of marijuana is what we've been doing for decades now. What lie would big tobacco tell to top Ronald Reagan's, well, smoking even one marijuana cigarette is equal in brain damage to being on Bikini Island during an H-bomb blast? Jeez. Now, I guess the lies would be in the opposite direction, right? Something like, marijuana will enhance the growth of that certain part of the male anatomy, or something else that a non-FDA approved supplement can get away with. So there's Sam I Am, Sam I Am. I will not eat your green eggs and ham. But let's not end this without tackling the Curly to Kevin Sabet's Mo and Patrick Kennedy's Larry, former Reagan speechwriter David Frum. With Frum and Kennedy on board, Sabet can pretend that the organization's bipartisan, you see. Well, let's see what Frum had to say about Sam I Am recently on a CNN opinion piece. The new group rejects the war on drugs model. It agrees that we don't want to lock people up for casual marijuana use or even stigmatize them with an arrest record. But what we do want to do is send a clear message. Marijuana use is a bad choice. As a parent of 3, 2 exiting adolescence and 1 entering, I've found that the argument that makes the biggest impression is, marijuana is illegal. Stay away. I think many other parents have found the same thing. When we write social rules, we always need to consider, who are we writing rules for? Some people can cope with complexity. Others need clarity. Some people will snap back from an early mistake. Others will never recover. Just say no is an easy rule to follow. It depends on individual risk factors, many of them unknowable in advance. That rule is not so easy. Oh, wow. It is amazing that someone can write, rejects the war on drugs model, and then support Just Say No in the same piece without his head exploding like that guy from Scanners, just from the severe cognitive dissonance. Although I suppose that is a skill you'd need if you were writing speeches for Ronald Reagan. Just say no, right? But if we say yes, well, mandatory rehab. And if we don't go, jail and fines. So, how exactly is this rejecting the war on drugs? Let me conclude with David Frum's conclusion. There's a trade-off, yes, and it takes the form of denying less vulnerable people easy access to a pleasure they believe they can safely use. But they are likely deluding themselves about how well they are managing their drug use. And even if they are not deluded, if they really are so capable and effective, then surely they can see that society has already been massively re-engineered for their benefit already. Surely, enough is enough. Fuck you, David Frum, and don't call me Shirley. Go manage your martini. That trade-off you dismiss so patronizingly is treating a certain segment of the population as second-class citizens. Well, that, too, I guess, would be a good skill for a Reagan speechwriter. How about this smart approach? How about we learn the lessons that we were taught in Blood and Treasure from 1920 to 1933 about the right public policy for a popular mind-altering substance? Treat marijuana like alcohol. Or why don't we learn the lessons that we've learned in dealing with big tobacco and get fewer kids smoking cigarettes than have ever smoked cigarettes in recorded history? Why can we not learn the lessons of alcohol and tobacco, and with an emerging marijuana market, have it begin with restrictions on advertising and begin with restrictions on location and public use? Why can't we learn the lessons of two other very popular substances and apply them to a substance that is the least harmful of the three? Why can we have a substance like tobacco that will engender dependence in 23 to 32% of the people that ever try it, a substance like alcohol that will engender dependence in 15% of the people who ever try it, but we've got to go gangbusters on trying to stop the people from taking the one that will 1 out of 11 will become dependent on. 9%, the lowest dependency rate, a dependency rate that is akin to caffeine. Marijuana and caffeine, when you list them in all the substances and rank them on the different factors of dependence, marijuana and caffeine come out just about similar, except for, of course, the whole, mind-altering effect. That comes out a little better than caffeine, unless you've been to Seattle and had a few of their triple shot mocha espressos. But that is the Sam I Am Project. You can find more about Sam I Am. Just go to my blog at radicalruss.com. The website is learnaboutsam.com, I believe. And again, I want to encourage everyone, if you haven't seen the picture, get that picture out there. I do not like the pills or booze. They make me sick. They make me snooze. I will not stop my smoking pot. Keep your booze, Sam. I like it not. I will not join you, Sam I Am. I do not need a rehab, Sam. I will not stop my smoking pot. Keep your pills. I like them not. That's the time for your Radical Rant today, and I just want to end up the day here because we got a guest who stepped in the studio before we end our first hour. This is the free podcast hour. I want to make sure people get a chance to say hi to Bradley Steinman from Students for Sensible Drug Policy. Hello, Bradley. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing great today, Russ. Thanks for having me on the show. It's good to be back.
Thank you. Good to have you back here. We're new on 420radio.org as well, so reaching out to a new audience. I hope everybody's digging the lineup here. So tell people, you're still in school, right?
Yeah,
Lewis Clark?
Last semester, Lewis and Clark.
Right, Lewis Clark Law School. And what are some of the things? What are some of the things you're wanting to work on this semester, and as far as the reforms go?
As far as reforms go, we're looking at hash type stuff in the legislature. I'm thinking like lobbying, like what's going on in the docket. We're looking at reciprocity for medical marijuana, which is like equalizing other states.
Big thing, yeah.
And Oregon basically has something like that. Like out-of-state patients can register here, but we give no effect to other cards from out-of-staters. Are we on?
You're on. Yeah.
Okay. And what else are we doing? We're doing misdemeanor possession. Right now, you go from a citation to a felony for possession, which is ridiculous. We're looking at what other states are doing. We're trying to bring sentencing guidelines for the state to be more akin to the federal. So instead of going from just basically like a parking ticket to a felony, you have a misdemeanor in between there, which is going to be good for trial purposes and good for people pleading out and not having a record and things like that. And then also looking at making manufacturing, otherwise known as growing, a misdemeanor instead of a felony. Right now it's only a felony, and that makes people have a permanent criminal record. It's not expungible, and it's tough for plea bargaining situations and trial situations. So looking at making manufacturing a misdemeanor.
That's great, man. Thanks for getting involved with that. We'll stick around in hour 2 here. We'll talk a little bit more about what's going on here in Oregon, because I think there's some misperception sometimes that things are, especially if you're coming from a state where it's much more repressive, that, things are all rosy here in Oregon, pardon the Portland pun. But there's a lot to be done. That thing about us going from ticket to felony, no other state has that. No other state has that. And still treating people growing plants for personal purposes the same way you treat people growing plants for commercial purposes. We got to have these differentiations. But we'll talk about that in hour 2. We got to go right now. So for Bradley Steinman and Brian the Red, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. Log on 420radio.org. Create your account today. Use our contact form to send me any questions, comments, or suggestions if you have them. Having any difficulties, we're here to help you out. For everyone here at Rolla J Studios, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
Take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.